Tonight, former Energy Minister and NPP presidential hopeful Boakye Agyarko insists it is a possibility on 9 other presidential aspirants may form an alliance against Vice President Dr Mahamadu Bawumia in case of a runoff in the party's presidential primaries.
Some of us, about 7 or 8 of us, have been discussing amongst ourselves on how to get them fixed. And the question was, would the non-establishment candidate after the runoff, meaning they are no longer part of the competition, ally themselves to the non-establishment candidate to face off the establishment candidate? With the way things evolve, I can see it happening. Now, all politics is alliance. Anyone who forgets that has lost an understanding of politics.
We have details with just 4 days to go before the NPP Superdelegates Congress that will end the presidential ambitions of 5 of the 10 presidential hopefuls. TopStory is always brought to you by Vodafone. It is now just 4 days before the NPP Superdelegates Congress that will effectively terminate the presidential ambitions of 5 of the 10 presidential aspirants. Tonight, one of the leading contenders has been clarifying details of a series of meetings held by at least 7 of the aspirants as part of their discussions regarding the strategic position they will take against the Vice President, Dr Mahamadu Bawumia, in case of a runoff in the main primary in November. Now, former Energy Minister Boakye Agyarko says their meetings have been based on the grievances they have with the process going forward and the uneven playing field. He says they have discussed and have a consensus that it is a possibility that they will form an alliance against the Vice President if it comes to the runoff. Listen.
Now, this question about gang up. The conversation was really about whether things were happening the way we wanted. And I said, no, it's not happening the way we want. And that some of the things that are happening, some of us, about 7 or 8 of us, have been discussing amongst ourselves on how to get them fixed. Now, it will be very strange that all of us who are leaders of this party, seeing things going wrong, and we say we will not discuss amongst ourselves.
What was going wrong?
What's going wrong?
What was going wrong?
Code of conduct, for example.
Was not being followed.
Was not being followed. The processes that we had to go through. It looks like every electoral cycle, these processes change. And we'll argue that we have to standardize these processes. So those discussions were going on between us. When that came to its end, then the question suddenly shifted to whether there was an establishment candidate. And I said, yes, it's the Vice President. No lie about it. Then as the discussion proceeded, the question was, if there is a runoff, now listen carefully, if there is a runoff, do we see ourselves cooperating against the establishment?
Like the history of the party shows you've done in the past.
And I said that we have not discussed that. We go in some place and discuss these matters. Phone. Pabra Japan, Jogate were my juniors in secondary school. Alancha Martin started the nursery Queen Ants all the way through.
So was a conclusion. Would you come together in case of runoff?
No, please. I don't like you answering my questions for me. What I said...
It's a question, by the way.
No, what I said, rhetorical. What I said was that we have not sat down to discuss that matter. However, given the way things work, I can see it happening.
What happening?
You see, when there's a runoff, it means all others have been eliminated. We are left with 2. Right? Say establishment candidate and a non-establishment candidate. And the question was, would the non-establishment candidate after the runoff, meaning they are no longer part of the competition, ally themselves to the non-establishment candidates to face off the establishment candidate. And I said, we haven't discussed any such thing. However, with the way things evolve, I can see it happening. Now, all politics is alliance. Anyone who forgets that has lost an understanding of politics, right? People forget that in 1996, CPP and NPP formed an alliance, the Great Alliance, to face off. Now the children of Nkrumah and the children of Buzia are now forming an alliance to go and face off NDC. So there is nothing wrong or strange about political alliance.
Okay. And in this case, just for clarity, the alliance could possibly be all of you possibly coming up against the establishment candidate.
I said it's a possibility. It can happen.
Okay.
But then suddenly you have journalists couching headlines like the Gang of Nine, as if we are a bunch of criminals sitting somewhere, mafiosos doing the unthinkable.
I'm grateful that you joined me.
All the best.
Well, you can catch a full interview of PM Express yesterday on many social media platforms, YouTube and Facebook as well. He says the party's failure to adhere to its own code of conduct governing internal elections has been a major issue since its founding.
This question of level playing field started in 1993 when we first wrote a code of conduct, to the extent that DJ Darocha had to rush to Kumasi, not Kumasi, Echuma Mwabieja, to stop certain things that were going on, right? It was then that we said, the party said, we need to have a code to regulate our behavior in this competitive environment. So we've been writing code of conduct since 1993. Unfortunately,
And revised it and revised it.
unfortunately, it's not been working. So this, to date, is not been working. All right. That doesn't mean we give up. If you try and you don't succeed, try again. We shouldn't reverse the adage and say, if you try and you don't succeed, blame somebody. If we try and you don't succeed, you try again. So we are trying.
Well, I want to bring in one of the other presidential hopefuls also in this particular race, Kojopoku. He's on the field campaigning with 4 days to go. Mr. Kojopoku, thanks for your time here on Top Story.
Yeah, good morning, Evans. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's 4 days to go. Ready?
Yeah, 4 days to go that Evans have not invited me to PM Express, so I'm not so happy.
Oh, don't worry. I mean, you are here. You're on
Top Story. I'm very worried. I mean, don't worry.
You're on Top Story. 4 days to go. Are you ready for the big battle on Saturday?
Well, yes. We've been ever ready since we started about a year and a half ago. So, yeah, tomorrow, Saturday will be the day that all that we've done, whether we've done well or we've not done so well, or we've done well but we have not been rewarded, would now be exposed.
I guess the delegates will have the final say.
Exactly. The 1%. I say that I am 99% sure I'm going to do well. The 1% is the fear delegate factor. So we'll know the 1% factor on Saturday.
Well, we've been talking to Boakye Agyarko, one of your other contenders in the race, and he says 7 or 8 of you have been discussing what to do in case of a runoff in the main primary in November. And the discussion surrounds and had to do with how do you deal with the establishment candidate. And he says the identification of Dr. Bawumia was one that everybody agreed he is the establishment candidate, and that the discussion was if it happens that you go to runoff, there's a possibility that you will form an alliance against him. Were you part of these discussions?
Well, I don't know if his words were exactly what you just put it, but let me tell you what I'm aware of. What I'm aware of is that there has been discussions among ourselves. The discussions among ourselves is to get to know each other look, at the end of the day, there are some of the aspirants that I have known from far. There are some of the aspirants that I have had very close relationship with. But as you go into such a race where there's 10 people, you need to be sure of, in case you don't make it, who do you back? Or in case you make it, who do you now get to now align with you? So that discussion has been ongoing. What everybody has to realize is that eventually there's going to be a winner. Now, if 5 comes off on Saturday and 5 goes into November 4th, and nobody even gets 50 plus 1, there's going to be a runoff between the top 2. So everybody at any point in time needs to be very conversant with the other person's message. So what the conversation I am part of is a conversation to get to know the other aspirants. There isn't a conversation that is saying that we are going to basically go against an establishment candidate. I don't think nobody has started to say that let's go after somebody. That's not what the conversation is.
But in these conversations, was there a consensus around who the establishment candidate is?
There is no such, that's what I'm saying, that there is no such conversation where somebody was called an establishment candidate. The conversation we've been having is trying to get to know each other. And if in likely event that you don't make it, these are my policies, would you want to now back me? And we're just basically talking. But like I'm saying, that nobody has sat and discussed somebody where you are saying that there's an establishment candidate. That's the point I want to make. Nobody has discussed an establishment candidate.
At least you've said that the permutations that happen among yourselves, if you don't make it and I make it, would you back me? Those conversations have happened, you said.
Yes, that conversation had happened, yes.
Okay. And in these conversations, and as Boakye Agyarko put it, he says the possibility, and I'm using that word because it's something that he emphasizes, was thrown in there about what will happen if the establishment candidate is still in this race against the establishment candidates. And he says the possibility came up. You say you haven't had any conversation about the possibility.
You keep using that word, establishment candidate. I'm just telling you that nobody has started and used the word establishment candidate. You know, I think it's a bit derogatory to call somebody an establishment candidate. There are 10 candidates in this thing. I have 9 competitors. None of them is called an establishment candidate. There are, if you want to mention a name, mention a name. You know what I mean? Because everybody knows that the 9 people that met was without Dr. Bawumia. Okay? And I don't think Dr. Bawumia is called an establishment candidate. So I don't want to refer to Doctor as an establishment candidate. But the 9 people that met and had a discussion was without Doctor. So I honestly don't want to go on that line of conversation as if somebody is tagged as an establishment candidate. That was not a conversation.
I want you to listen to Boakye Agyarko because he used that word. That's why I keep repeating it. What he exactly said was discussed in this meeting as it relates to this so-called establishment candidate. This is Boakye Agyarko again.
Its end. Then the question suddenly shifted to whether there was an establishment candidate. And I said, yes, it's the vice president. No lie about it. Then as the discussion proceeded, the question was, if there is a runoff, now listen carefully, if there is a runoff, do we see ourselves cooperating?
That's in there. The discussion
He's narrating what transpired in his city interview. He is not narrating to you what happened in our discussion.
No. Sorry about that. That's not what he was discussing. He's talking about the discussions that says 7 or 8 of you had.
No. I beg to differ.
I did it. Could you? I did the interview.
Evans, let me be honest. Let me have it. Look, what Mr. Boakye Agyarko was explaining to you, you didn't get it.
No.
Was happening establishment candidate conversation came out. Go and play his interview. He was explaining to you.
I don't really haven't listened to this other interview you referred to, but I was asking him a question about
the conversation he was telling you about. He was not telling about the conversation we had.
I'm talking to you about my interview. I don't know about any other interview he's had somewhere. He was referring to discussions that he says 7 or 8 of you had. That's what he was referring to, not an interview he had somewhere else. I don't know about, but that's what he was referring to.
Conversation.
Then you are not part of that conversation.
No, I have not been part of any conversation where as he's narrated, that somebody said that and somebody's an establishment candidate. I was not. But I assure you 100% that conversation he was referring to you in your interview was his interview
he wasn't.
on
No, Kojo, that's not what he was referring to, and that is very categorical.
In part of a conversation where somebody was called an establishment candidate.
Okay, so that's his position. That he says that it came up, and he believes so. But let me ask you generally, though, going into the after the Saturday's Congress on this subject, though. When there have been meetings and Dr. Bawumia wasn't part of the meeting, I'm curious whether an invitation was extended to him to be part of these discussions.
All the time.
And what did his team or himself tell you?
I have no idea what the response is, but I was invited and everybody was invited to this meeting. There's nothing that stops. You see, there isn't, like, as Mr. Boakye Agyarko said on your show, there isn't like a cabal or a mafioso or whatever. Look, I have Mr. Adenimo's number. I have Dr. Preku's number. I have Honorable Allen's number. We all talk among ourselves. In the meetings that were had, even the letter, you remember we wrote the letter, we did a petition to the party for the centralized voting, right? When that letter was done, it was sent to Dr. Bawumia. He just refused to sign it. So everything that we have done, we've done as 10. He is aware of everything that we've done. So that, at the end of the day, the fact that he's not part of it doesn't mean that he's aware of it or not aware of it. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that there isn't a cabal or an underground conversation. These are open conversation among friends. It's nothing to do with somebody doing something in hiding.
And to make the point, Boakye Agyarko make that point too, that this is not a gang. It was just a discussion among aspirants. But let me ask you, if it comes down to a runoff, as he said, and Dr. Bawumia is still standing in this runoff, and let's say you are not part of the two, would you support him?
I don't know. I have not spoken to him. Others have spoken to me. He has not called me. Others have called me. So at the end of the day, who would you call a friend? The one talking to that you are sitting down and talking to, or the one that has not called you? Look, I have called others. Others have called me. So if I'm in the race, I expect others to support me. If others are in the race, I expect to support them. If let's say touch wood, it doesn't happen. But on Saturday, I'm not part of the fight going forward. Because I have been talking to some of the people that would have been made going forward, I might be comfortable supporting one or two people because I think that I have spoken to them and I know what their policies are and I'm comfortable with their policies. Doctor has not called me. I have not called him. So I don't see how, unless that happens. Look, we have till now to November 4th. Maybe after this interview, Doctor will call me. I don't know. But you see, what people should understand is that I see Doctor as a colleague in this race. Yes, he's the vice president of the country, but I see him also as a colleague, as an aspirant colleague in this race. Now, if I'm part of the 5 and he's part of the 5, we are 5 colleagues in this race. So there's nothing wrong with him picking the phone and calling me. Or if I have his number, I'll call him. But there needs to be that relationship between me and somebody before I can support that person. I can't get third parties or fourth parties calling me and telling me to support somebody. I'm going to work with an individual. That person should at least have a rapport with me. That's where it starts.
Could you please stay with me? Thankfully, your colleague and friend, fellow party member, former Minister Nana Kumia, who speaks for the Vice President, joins us now. Mr. Kumia, thanks for your time here on Top Story. Hello, Mr. Kumia. Thanks for your time on Top Story. Hello.
Hello.
Nana. Hi, Nana. Can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Kumia. Can you hear me? Okay. Let's see if we can get his attention. Hello, Nana. Can you hear me? Okay. We'll get him to talk to us on what we've been learning, discussions that has happened over the last many few months or weeks, if you may. And we still have Kojo Poku with me. Kojo, so on Saturday, tell me about the processes leading into it. I mean, Boakye Agyarko says the discussions, there's still a lot of dissatisfactions and grievances around the level playing field or the lack thereof, and the adherence to the code of conduct. Happy so far with the way the party has managed the process going into Saturday?
Well, there are two things happening. There is an election committee that has been working with us for the last 1 month. and everybody is very happy with the election committee and the work that they are doing. The code of conduct issue is to do with the wider party issue. So that has got nothing to do with the work of the election committee leading to this election. So you have to separate the two. The issue of party members not being said that, look, you need to take stance, or people declaring stance, I think the party has not been able to put a handle on it. They've tried, they've sent out a lot of communique, but we've seen videos and stuff, people doing declaration. For me, that is okay. I mean, because I think that a lot of people are doing what you call institutional politics. People who are openly declaring are not probably going to vote for the people they're declaring for. And I know this for a fact. I think let's concentrate on the work that the election committee has done. Everybody in this race is happy with the work of the election committee that far. And I think that it is sometimes other people who are outside the whole process that try to put in one or two words to make it look like there is storm in the water. There's nothing. There's no storm in the teacup. Everybody is okay with the work of the election committee.
And you're confident that Saturday will yield free, fair elections across the country?
100%. I think that we have put in enough measures to make sure that it will safeguard a free and fair election. We are yet to see what the day will turn out to be, but enough measures have been put in place to make sure that is ensured.
Nana Kumia joins us now. And Nana, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, Nana, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. I mean, we've just been listening to Boakye Agyarko, who has been talking about discussions among some of the aspirants. That does not include your man. You speak for the vice president. And he says, well, the discussions have centered around cooperation, but also alliances being built. And what will happen in case of a runoff. And says the possibility is there that an alliance will be formed against the establishment candidate who they identify, or he identifies as Dr. Bawumia. Has this come to your attention of these meetings, and is that something that you're worried about in case of a runoff?
Well, thank you. Evans, indulge me just a little bit, because you have been speaking to some of these gentlemen. What is an establishment candidate? Did you get a definition clear?
Well, I guess there's a standard definition for that. It's somebody who the establishment supports. An establishment here will be the established individuals in your party, the president, and others.
But the president has come out clearly that he doesn't support anybody.
Well, I know also in the interviews I've done, many of the aspirants say they simply do not believe him. I've heard from Kwabena Japan and others who say they don't believe that what he's saying, he's actually acting it out.
And did they give any reason for not believing the president?
You believe the president?
Yes.
Well, they don't.
Okay. I wanted to get a definition clear so I can understand the issues more clearly. What I believe is that Dr. Bawumia is the front runner. Establishment candidate, which means he's getting support from the executive or whatever. I don't understand it, but I am comfortable with describing him as the front runner.
Okay, so you don't want to use that terminology. However,
because it's not clearly defined.
Well, I think in political circles, and you are an astute politician, I think you fairly understand when they say someone is an establishment candidate. The executive supports him, even the party structures back him, and hence you hear the complaints about code of conduct, level playing field, etc.
Yes. Because
the sense is everything else is conspiring to give him an advantage. And that's why they see him as an establishment candidate.
Is that the case? Is there any clear evidence that the party structure or even the government structure is behind one candidate? Is there any evidence to that effect? Because I am very key in Dr. Bawumia's campaign, and I do not get that. Well, but I'm comfortable with describing him as the front runner because that's the feedback that we are getting from the ground.
If you believe Boakye Agyarko, he says there is a possibility of an alliance of the other aspirants against him if he's still standing in the runoff in November. Worried about that?
Well, I'm not worried. I find it interesting because if you take that position now, way before the election, then there's a certain prejudice that come up for suspicion. So I believe that all the aspirants should have an open mind, because at the end of the day, you want a candidate for the party that can win the elections for the party. And in this decision, there should be less emotion and more forthright thinking. So I would want the aspirants, and these are very experienced gentlemen, to keep an open mind, see how the results will go, see what kind of conversations you can have with each other. To say that we've decided on this course of action would presume that you have excluded one of yourselves right from the get-go, and that would not be giving the correct signal. I believe that they should have an open mind. Alliances are allowed in politics or in any other activity. Alliances are allowed, but the alliances should not be formulated in a way that will seem to ab initio exclude somebody or some others. That would be my only.
However, we've heard from at least one of the aspirants, Kojo Poku, who says in these conversations they've tried to reach out to Dr. Bawumia, but he hasn't responded. They've written to him, even himself. He says Bawumia hasn't reached out to him, and if he has his number, he will call him. But because others are talking to him, in case he's out of the top 5, he will align with those he knows, those who've reached out to him, and he understands your policies, and they have a certain common understanding. What do you say to that? Why is Bawumia not making himself available and not interacting with the others?
I wouldn't claim to know everything, but what I know is that when there was some, for want of a better word, let me call it petition, about the having a centralized point for the voting, Dr. Bawumia stand was that it really didn't matter to him whether there was a centralized voting or there was a decentralized voting. But all the subsequent meetings, I know or I do not know that he has been invited. But this business about talking to each other, I believe that it's a bit too early. Let the first round results come. And then if Bawumia has to do any talking at that stage, I'm sure those talking or those conversations will be done.
But specifically, you listening to Kojo Poku, for example, say if he reaches out, he will listen to him, and that will give him a certain understanding and lay the foundations for cooperation going forward. Can you guarantee that will happen?
Timing is important. All these 10 gentlemen are in this game or in this contest to win. Now, really, you cannot decide that you may not win or you would not win or I would not win, so come to my side or I come to your side. I believe that the timing will be a bit more appropriate after the first round of voting, and then we'll see how the pieces fall. And then you would know how to have those conversations. And I'm very sure that after the first round, Dr. Bawumia will be having conversations.
Kojo Poku, you're happy to listen after the first round, after Saturday?
Oh, but I think myself and my big brother are saying the same thing. You know, when he came on, he said exactly what I was saying, that to now call somebody an establishment candidate for me is not the right thing to say. And also, there is the need to have a conversation before you exclude somebody. And that is why I said that what we are doing, and that is the conversation that is happening among the other aspirants, is to be talking. If a candidate feels that, okay, it's too early for me at this stage, I will do it at a later stage. Look, like I said, we are all in this together, like my brother said, is to win it. At any point in time, if I'm part of the 5, because I think, again, as Nana wants to call his candidate a front runner, he feels that, look, I'm going to go to November 4th, and I don't want to start engaging people that might not make it to the final 5. So let me see what the final 5 is going to be. Then I don't stretch myself thin, so I talk to the 5 that makes it from this. It's all welcome. Everybody in their campaign has their own strategy. So if that's their strategy, look, at any point in time, talking is never too late. It's better late than never.
And Nana, just to check something with you, something that some have reported, that the Vice President was in Kumasi on Sunday, for example, with a presidential jet, waiting for him, and state vehicles as well. Security also in a bus waiting for him. All that many point to say, isn't that what makes him an establishment candidate? Can you confirm that these facts are indeed the case? And if that's the case, obviously, then many will look at that as an affirmation of the position that he is the establishment candidate.
Well, Evans, I can confirm to you that the Vice President is supposed to have left today for Tamale by the presidential jet, if you like. And he's going to perform an official function in Tamale by performing the opening ceremony for the new Tamale airport. I'm not too sure about this Kumasi thing that you are talking about, but I know about Tamale. Now, it is always going to be difficult to completely divorce or separate his function as vice president and his function and campaign activities. It's always going to be difficult. But every effort will be made, and because I know that he's rented his own bus. The main campaign vehicle is a bus that he has rented, and all of us sit in the bus as we move from one constituency to the other. We have lunch in the bus. We all get our takeaways and we eat in the bus and put it in the bin. And he's not using official vehicle, but he will be entitled to his security, because he's still the vice president. In many instances, during the polls, when the president is out of the country, he's actually the acting president. So it will be a little difficult to completely separate the two functions. I know about Tamale that he's going there to perform this official function. I remember one during either the Western Regional Tour, where we had to break the tour because there was a message that he had to represent the president at a function in Kaswa. I think there was it a Presbyterian church or something. He had to break the tour abruptly to go and perform an official function, and so he had to use official means of transport. So it's a situation where you can't completely separate the two functions. But as we go ahead in our democratic development, I would like a situation where the rules are more clearly and more definitely written so that we know where the lines are.
Nana, thank you very much. Nana Bawumia speaks for Dr. Bawumia. Kojo Poku himself is a presidential hopeful. This is your election headquarters as we build up into Saturday.